All right, so we're going to be solving equations with square roots and cube roots. So here we go. So your first job here, these are kind of like absolute value problems in the sense that you have to isolate the item. So like when we used to solve absolute value equations like this, let's say that, we had to add 4 to both sides and we had to divide by 3 and so forth. We had to get this part of the equation alone. And so that's what we're trying to do here as well. All right, so I need to divide both sides by 2. So that way I have the square root of x plus 5 equals 4. So now, to get rid of a square root, I am going to square both sides. That is the reverse action of a square root. So this knocks out, x plus 5 pops out, and I get 16. Take away 5, and I get 11. And to do a quick check, if you put 11 in here, 11 plus 5, this turns into 16. The square root of 16 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. And so it works out. All right, over here, letter B, I got a cube root. So let's take away 15. That gets me a 6 over here. And then at the same time, I'm going to divide by 3. So that's 2. So I have the cube root 4x plus 1 equals 2. So now I want to get rid of a cube root. So to get rid of a cube root, I cube both sides. So when I do that, the 4x plus 1 pops out because these cancel, and I get 8. And then take away 1 is 7, and 7 over 4 would be my answer. All right, letter C, I'm going to take away 6. I have the square root of 3 minus 4x equals 7. Now, one important thing to note, if you clean this up and you have a square root equaling a positive number, that's fine because square roots come out to positive answers. But if you ever get a square root equaling a negative, there's going to be a problem there. The square root of a number cannot be negative. Now the cube root of a number can be negative, right? Like the cube root of something equaling a negative, like let's say we had -8 would be -2. That's possible. But a square root of like a -4, remember that's like 2i, that's imaginary, so that's not going to happen to us here. All right, so I'm ready to square both sides. So 3 minus 4x comes out, 49. And we'll just solve that, take away 3. So I get -4x equals 46. So x equals 46 over -4, so it'll be 23 over 2, or the decimal. All right, over here, letter E, both sides have a cube root. So basically what we're doing here is we are going to cube both sides, but also it should be kind of like intuitive. If you have a cube root equal to another cube root, then that means that this part has to equal that part. So that's the equation that's going to come out to us. These cancel out, and we get x minus 5 is equal to 7 minus 2x, and you just solve it. All right, so add 2x over here. I get 3x, add 5 there, 12, and so x equals 4. All right, here I got take away 2. I'm going to isolate this. I got x plus 5 to the 2/3 equals 4. So now, what you're really doing earlier is this. When you see something, for instance, here, you have a cube root of 4x plus 1. So that's 4x plus 1 to the 1/3. Remember, a cube root is a 1/3 power. And so what you've been doing by applying this third power is you've been basically doing a third power, which when you have a power and a power here, these two powers here, remember, you multiply those. And so those are the reciprocals of each other. That's why they're canceling out. And so what we're going to do here to get rid of a 2/3 power is we're going to take everything to a 3/2 power. Okay, so that means that x plus 5 pops down. And over here, 4 to the 3rd, and then the square root, or 4 to the 3/2. So the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 to the 3rd is 8. Or we can do 4 to the 3rd and square root. Either way, the square root of 64 is also 8. So take away 5, you get 3. All right, over here, take away 10 from both sides. I got x minus 7. Oh, yeah. X minus 7 equals -6. There's a problem. A square root equaling a negative is never going to happen. So you have to stop yourself in the situation and say no solution. A square root equaling a negative. Over here, I got to add 2 to clean this up. So that's -8. Then I got to divide by 4. So I get negative 2 equals the cube root of x plus 6. Now this is perfectly fine. The cube root can be negative. I go on and cube both sides. So I get x plus 6 to come out equals negative 8. And I'm going to go ahead and subtract 6, so I'll get negative 14. All right. So on a problem like this one here, this next one, we have x on both sides, and you have to deal with this. You want to go ahead and check your answers, because watch what's going to happen here. Immediately when I look at this, I'm like, well, I have to get rid of the square root. So why don't I go ahead and square both sides? Well, 72 minus x comes out, and the other side is x squared. So now this is a different problem, a more difficult problem to solve. It's not just a linear equation, it's like a quadratic. So I'm going to have to get everything onto one side and move the x over, move the 72 over, and I'm going to find myself having to factor. What multiplies the 72 is 9 times 8, plus 9 and a minus 8. So I get two answers. I get negative 9 and positive 8. Now, I have this big check thing here. So you have to be careful. Whenever you go and you get two answers like this, you want to check to make sure they're both okay. So think about it. You have a square root equaling, and this one says it's going to equal a negative 9. You know a square root will never be negative. That answer is no good. But 8 is okay. 72 minus 8 is 64. The square root of 64 is 8. But that negative right there, sometimes the negatives are okay because it works itself out, but negative 9 is an extraneous solution, so you can't keep it. All right, now this one, this is the hardest one of the page. I'm going to have to move this 1 over here because I want to be able to square this square root so that I can get rid of it. Okay, so let's move the 1 over. So I'm going to get the square root of 5x minus 5 equaling x minus 1. So at this point right now, I'm going to be squaring both sides. So I get 5x minus 5 popping out. And over here, x minus 1 squared. So that means I got to multiply out x minus 1 times x minus 1. So when I do that, I get x squared minus 2x plus 1. Remember, first, outside, inside, last. And I'm going to have to put everything to one side, so I can factor, hopefully. All right, so when I factor, I get x minus 6 and x minus 1. So my answers are 6 and 1. So I have to check these and make sure that they both are going to be okay answers. So let's check them out. So let me imagine putting a 6 in here and a 6 over here. So it's going to be 30 minus 5. So it's the square root of 25. That's 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. All right, that seems good. Let's put a 1 in. Put a 1 here. I get 5 minus 5. So that's 0 plus 1. So that's 1. And equals 1. So they're both okay.